This conference will now be recorded.
Alright, now let us talk about other points which are straight away connected to customer and then vendor. So far we were talking about vendor, we are also talking about customer. Everybody has got at least basic fair idea related to vendor, related to customer. Yes, no? What is happening with
Yes.
customer, what is happening with vendor, what things we need to understand, at least at very high level. Some points are triggering our mind. That is enough at this moment. And beyond this, we will try to understand certain other point. So first thing, those who are not talking, those who have background noise, please be on mute so that it will not create disturbance when you are watching the recording. Otherwise, the recording might have unnecessary background noises which might disturb you listening and then attending the or watching the recording. Make sure you pay attention on these kind of things, background noise and all, which do not give me a chance to repeat it again to mute or ensure that your background noise is coming. All right. So first point from the vendor point of view, first point from the customer point of view, if I look at from a business transaction perspective, in this case, it is invoice. In this case also, it is invoice. Am I correct? For vendor, I need to create an invoice. For customer also, I need to create an invoice. Now, in case of invoice, in case of a customer, my accounting entry will be, let me put accounting entry. Let me put this here also. The accounting entry for vendor, let's write, let's say
Sir,
basic thing.
sir, I'm sorry for interrupting. The screen is on a DM engine screen showing SAP. Are you sharing Excel, sir?
Yeah. Others, can you see my Excel sheet?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it is Excel.
Yes, yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Those who are not able to see, just try to rejoin. It will be fine. Okay. Those who are not able to see the Excel sheet, just try to rejoin. Maybe due to some technical issue, it might happen. When you rejoin, it will be fine. Okay. The accounting entry for vendor invoice will be purchase account debit, vendor account credit. Similarly, for customer will be customer account debit, sales account credit. Are these two accounting entries clear for everyone?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Now, in this accounting entry, one point which we need to understand, if I put this in a box, similarly, if I put this in a box, both. Now, what we need to understand from these 2 points is whenever we record any vendor invoice, whenever we record any customer invoice, one point which we need to understand something called document splitting. They should immediately strike our mind. When you're talking about vendor invoice, when you're talking about customer invoice, immediately we need to think about, yes, when I'm talking about vendor invoice or when I'm talking about customer invoice, there is a functionality called document splitting, which I need to remember. Why we need to remember document splitting at the time of accounting entry related to any invoice, whether it is related to customer or it is related to vendor. Reason, at the time of a customer or at the time of a vendor invoice, are we having a sub-ledger involvement or not in the accounting entry?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? In the customer accounting entry, in the vendor accounting entry, customer, vendor both are appearing. In short, this vendor account here and this customer account here, both are sub-ledger. Both are sub-ledger. In SAP, we understood there is a basic fundamental rule. No profit center, no accounting entry in SAP. Am I correct? As
Yes,
per
sir.
our initial understanding, no profit center, no accounting entry in SAP FICO. Now, according to this statement, we also understood profit center is applicable for main ledger or for sub ledger.
Main ledger.
Main
Profit
ledger.
center is applicable only for the main ledger. Customer and vendor are not main ledger. Customer and vendor are sub ledger. So straight away for sub ledger, profit center field is not available, or profit center cannot be updated for customer account. Profit center cannot be updated for vendor account in standard SAP. It is not possible. Reason: profit center can be updated, entered only against the GL account, not against sub GL account. So customer is a sub GL or vendor is a sub GL, in short sub ledger. Now, in order to ensure our statement is justified, no profit center, no accounting entry, you need to ensure customer account will be receiving the profit center, vendor account is also receiving the profit center based on a connecting the GL account, which is called as what account? What account are we representing, which is connecting your customer vendor to your main ledger?
Reconciliation.
Reconciliation account. Right, your vendor account is connected with main ledger with the help of reconciliation account. Similarly, customer account is also connected to main ledger with the help of reconciliation account. Customer reconciliation account is accounts receivable. Vendor reconciliation account is accounts payable. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Customer reconciliation account is accounts receivable. Vendor reconciliation account is accounts payable. Now, these two accounts are getting into the picture at the time of a simulation. When you simulate a document, you have two views. One is data entry view. What is the other view?
General ledger.
General ledger.
General ledger view. Right? Now, your document splitting is applicable for data entry view of a document or general ledger view of a document.
General ledger.
General ledger view.
It is applicable for general ledger view of a document. When we know that it is applicable for general ledger view of a document, when you're talking about general ledger view, as the name itself is suggesting, it is general ledger view. It contains only general ledger account. General ledger account is representing GL account. General ledger account is representing a GL account. GL means GL account only. GL does not include customer. GL does not include vendor. So when I'm talking about general ledger view or GL view, I should not mention vendor account. I should not mention customer account. Vendor will be replaced with accounts payable. Customer will be replaced with accounts receivable. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In my GL view, in my general ledger view, vendor will be replaced with accounts payable. Customer will be replaced with accounts receivable, which we need to slowly understand because total SAP FICO works on the same fundamental concepts. Once we are trying to understand that this is how system is going to work. Similarly, when you look at anything going forward, it will be easy for you to straight away connect. Okay, this is the reason these things are happening. This is the reason why everybody is talking about document splitting. This is the reason many entries are not posted. Many errors we may be getting if we do not understand concept of document splitting. In the document splitting, there are three types. In the document splitting, there are three types. One is active, two is passive, third one is zero balance. One is active, two is passive, third one is zero balance we will be having. When you're talking about invoice posting, we need to make sure whenever you record invoice, out of these three document splitting, we will be using active document splitting. Active document splitting will be used at the time of invoice posting. Whenever you cancel the invoice, what is it called as?
Passive.
Credit memo. Right? Whenever you cancel the invoice or whenever you make any returns, whenever you make any adjustment in the vendor account or in the customer account, we basically call it as credit memo. In short, At the time of invoice posting, at the time of a credit memo posting, or at the time of invoice cancellation, at the time of your any kind of adjustment posting, system will be using document splitting. Which document splitting will be used? Which method?
Active.
Active document splitting will be used. We will be using active document splitting. In the active document splitting, you need to understand line items. When I'm talking about line items, line item is equal to each debit and each credit. If I look at vendor invoice accounting entry, in the accounting entry, how many debits, how many credits are available?
2. Debit.
Right? One debit is available, one credit is available. How many line items are available?
As many.
2 line items.
No,
In
in
this
S4 we have
accounting
up to
entry,
99.
here,
Triple nine.
how many line items are available?
999.
In this accounting entry, which I have listed,
One line
only
item.
Only 2.
One line item.
line items is equal to debit and credit. So you need to count each debit, you need to count each credit, and you need to do a sum. Total debits, total credits in a journal entry in an accounting document. In my vendor invoice, how many debits, how many credits I have?
1 debit, 1 credit.
One debit, one credit. Total how many debits and credits together?
One each.
Total 2.
Total will be 2, right? So now I need to understand, okay, in my vendor invoice, I have 2 line items. Am I correct? Can I say my vendor invoice contains 2 line items? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? Similarly, if I look at my customer invoice, how many line items my customer invoice is containing?
2.
2 line items.
My customer invoice is also containing 2 line items, one debit line item and then one credit line item. Now here you need to understand one point called as offsetting account. So far we are talking about different points called as GL account, customer account, debit account, credit account, P&L account, balance sheet account, asset account, liability account, expense account, and different kind of account. Now I am writing a point called as offsetting account. Offsetting account is not representing any account name. It is just representing other account. Offsetting account means other account. In short, if I'm talking about any journal entry, each journal entry contains at least one debit and one credit. Am I correct? Each journal entry must contain at least one debit, at least one credit. Am I correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, if I'm talking about debit, credit becomes offsetting. If I'm talking about credit, debit becomes offsetting. Whatever you are missing, that missing will become offsetting. Am I clear?
Yeah.
If I'm telling you debit, offsetting is representing a credit. If I'm telling you about credit, offsetting becomes debit. Is that clear?
Got it.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right? If I'm talking about a debit, offsetting is talking about the credit. If I'm talking about credit, offsetting is representing a debit. Offsetting is nothing but missing account or the other account. Do not have any kind of a confusion. Offsetting account means either missing account or the other or opposite account. Now in this example, if I'm talking about vendor, what is the vendor offsetting in this accounting entry?
Purchase.
Debit.
Purchases, right? So here we will not be talking a debit and credit. Only for the example I have listed a debit credit. we will always represent name of the debit, we will always represent name of the credit. Am I clear? So if I'm talking about what is the offsetting for vendor, what will be the answer?
Purchase account.
Purchase.
Purchases. If I tell
Purchase account.
what is the offsetting account for purchases?
Vendor.
Vendor
Vendor.
account.
Vendor account.
Vendor.
Similarly, in this case, if I'm talking about what is the offsetting for customer?
Sales.
Sales.
Sales. What is the offsetting for sales?
Customer account.
Customer. Sometimes you may be having multiple debits, multiple credits. Not necessary. Every time you will have a one debit. Not necessary. Every time you will have a one credit, right? There may be multiple debits. There may be multiple credit. All these multiple debits will become offsetting. All these multiple credits will become offsetting. Now, in this example, for us to connect the point, what I want you to do is, you're talking about document splitting for invoice posting based on active document splitting. Now, based on the active document splitting, you're currently specifically talking about vendor invoice, customer invoice. In the vendor invoice, in the customer invoice, you have to clearly understand vendor is a subledger, customer is a subledger. Am I correct?
Yes.
Vendor is a subledger, customer is a subledger. What is the vendor offsetting?
Purchase.
Purchase. What is the nature of purchase? Is it a GL or subsidy?
GL.
It is a GL. Purchase is a GL account. If I am talking about the customer invoice, offsetting account for customer?
Sales.
Sales. Sales is a GL or sub GL?
GL.
Sales is a GL account. Sales is a GL account. Okay. Now your active document splitting will be representing or will be taking profit center from offsetting account will update the profit center. From now, I will be writing PRCTR to represent profit center. I am not going to write profit center full name. I will only write PRCTR. You need to understand PRCTR is representing a profit center in SAP. So offsetting account will update the profit center for customer and vendor. Clear? Is this line clear?
Yes.
So what we need to understand, whenever you post any vendor invoice, just look at the accounting entry. When you're looking at the accounting entry, you will understand in my accounting entry, definitely I will have a vendor account. Vendor account is a sub-GL account. For sub-GL account, there is no profit center. My vendor account will have an offsetting account. Let me look at what is my offsetting account for the vendor. I got to know purchase is the offsetting account. Purchase is a GL account. GL contains profit center. GL profit center is updated in my vendor account. GL profit center is updated in my vendor account. In which view? Entry view or general ledger view?
General ledger.
In the general ledger view. Similarly, when I'm talking about invoice for customer, I understand, okay, customer invoice entry will be customer account debit, sales account credit, customer account is a subledger. For subledger, there is no profit center. So I have to look at what is my offsetting account for customer. I got to know my customer offsetting account is a sales. Sales is a GL account. For sales GL account, there will be a profit center. Sales GL profit center will be updated in my customer account. In which view? Entry view or general ledger view?
GL view.
In the general ledger view. In the data entry view, for this particular entry, for the data entry view, you will be updating customer account on the debit side. On the general ledger view, customer account will be replaced by which account?
Accounts
Receivable.
Accounts receivable account. If you are writing the customer account, it becomes entry view because it is a sub-ledger account. If you are writing accounts receivable, Akash, can you please be on mute? Okay, when you're writing customer account, it is a entry view because it is a sub-ledger account, and then when you're writing accounts receivable, it is a general ledger view because accounts receivable is a reconciliation GL account. Am I correct? Slowly we need to make sure, okay, now I think I'm able to understand. You will not be completely understanding, but at least you will see the improvement, you'll see the difference. Yes or no? Slowly we are able to connect the dots. Right? This is important for all of us to ensure, okay, I think some improvement I'm able to see. Only the little improvement I want you to see, not the complete improvement, not understanding it completely. I know it is not possible. You also need to understand at this moment, it is not possible. The only possibility is to make sure you are finding it comfortable, you are finding it convenient to understand. That's all. Okay, this is all about your document splitting at very high level. We are only talking about vendor invoice. We are only talking about customer invoice, in which we understood to pass this accounting entry. You must keep in your mind the document splitting concept, especially active document splitting. Now, whenever you are talking about any invoice posting, if it is vendor invoice, we are liable to pay.
Yes.
If it is customer invoice, we are supposed to receive.
Yes.
Yes.
If it is vendor invoice, we are supposed to pay. If it is customer invoice, we are supposed to receive. Now, in either of the cases, is it a payment? One case, it is incoming payment. On the other case, it is outgoing payment. Payment inward, payment outward. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? Remember, we don't call it with a terminology called for vendor it is payment, for customer it is receipt. We don't use that terminology. Though somebody is using that terminology, please make sure you are understanding it in such a way. For customer, it is a payment. For vendor, also it is payment. But when you're talking about customer, your payment will become incoming payment. When you're talking about vendor, your payment will become outgoing payment. Am I clear?
Okay.
Because as we move forward, when it comes to banking, when it comes to bank reconciliation, when it comes to different other topics in SAP FICO, different other scenarios in SAP FICO, in real environment also, we will be using incoming, outgoing transaction very frequently. Not payment receipt, it is always payment only. You will be segregating vendor, customer with the help of another keyword called incoming, outgoing. Okay, either it is incoming payment or it is outgoing payment. It is a payment in short. So whenever you're talking about payment, we are representing passive document splitting. What are we representing? Passive document splitting at the time of a payment or at the time of a clearing. What is this clearing? I will explain you as we move forward. At this moment, we have not covered any scenario with which I can make you understand what is clearing. So let us only try to understand the payment. As we move forward, I'll give different example with which you can connect what is a clearing. So at this moment, we will only understand the payment. Based on this vendor invoice, everybody understood vendor account is on which side?
Debit, sir.
Vendor account is on which side?
Credit.
Credit.
Credit side.
Credit, sir.
Credit side. Now, as per accounting, credit is equal to, in short, vendor CR is equal to liability. Am I correct?
Liability.
Yes.
And customer DR is equal to
Asset.
asset.
That.
Okay. If your vendor is representing a credit balance, we are talking about liability. If your customer is representing a debit balance, we are talking about asset. Now, first point. Yes. First point, let us focus on the vendor. Whenever you're talking about any vendor, ideally your vendor account must represent credit balance, because from vendor we are purchasing something, either material or a service or an asset. Yes or no? Whenever you're purchasing anything from a vendor on credit basis, are we supposed to pay later or not? Maybe immediately, maybe after a week, maybe after 10 days, after 1 month, after 2 months, after 3 months, we need to pay based on the payment terms. Now, when you say that you need to pay to the vendor, are we liable to pay or not?
Yes.
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 Right? We are liable to pay to the vendor. When we know we are liable to pay to the vendor, any liability shows the credit balance as per basic accounting equation. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
As per the
Yes.
basic accounting equation, any liability will be representing a credit balance. As a result, we are crediting the vendor. Now, when I'm representing my liability as a credit balance, when I'm clearing my liability, I need to reduce the liability, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
When I'm clearing my liability, I need to make sure I am reducing my liability. If my liability is increased by credit, how do I decrease my liability?
By
Debit.
debiting.
Increase
By
the
debiting.
Debit.
I need to decrease the liability by debiting my liability account. Currently, what is your liability account here?
Vendor.
Vendor.
Vendor is the liability.
Vendor
So
account.
to clear the liability, I need to debit vendor or I need to credit vendor.
Paid vendor.
Debit
Debit.
vendor.
We
Liability
have
will
to
be created.
debit
We need
vendor.
to
Vendor. Debit
we
vendor.
need to debit the vendor. So in case if I am making payment here, I think somebody has not muted. Please make sure you will mute your mics, those who are not talking. Okay. Next one, let me talk about, or let us write. I'm only writing payment. I'm not writing incoming. I'm not writing outgoing. I want you to understand what is incoming, what is outgoing payment. Though you have confusion, let your confusion will be there in your mind until it becomes a clarity. Okay. Here also payment, here also payment. Now here I have a liability to my vendor. Now I need to make sure my liability is decreased by processing the payment. When I process the payment, I need to decrease my liability. To decrease the liability, I need to debit my liability. In which form your liability is currently sitting? In the form of a vendor. I'll put vendor account debit. To process the payment, let's say you are processing the payment from bank account. Can I put bank account credit? Is this payment coming in or is this payment going out?
Going out.
Going.
Going out.
I am going to put bank outgoing credit. Clear?
Yes.
This is my accounting entry here. Similarly, when I'm talking about payment accounting entry here, customer is on the debit side because customer has to pay me money. When customer is giving me money, I need to keep my customer account as outstanding, or I need to tell that my customer has cleared the payment, or my customer had paid the amount.
Paid the amount.
Right? When once I receive the money from customer, I should not show that from customer account I need to still receive the money. I should not represent in that way. Am I correct?
Yes.
So I need to reduce my asset value. To reduce the asset value, what I need to do? Currently, asset is representing in the form of a customer. If I receive the money from customer, do I need to debit customer again or I need to credit the customer?
Credit the customer.
Credit.
I need to credit my customer account. Now I received money from the customer. Let's say customer had given money in my bank account. When you're receiving money in the bank, money is coming in or money is going out?
Coming in.
Coming in.
Money is coming in. So I will be writing bank
Bank income.
incoming debit. Now are these two accounting entries clear? for payment?
Yes.
Yes.
For customer,
Yes.
payment
Yes.
for vendor, both are clear. Next point, what we need to understand, same logic again. Look at the accounting entry of customer payment. Look at the accounting entry for vendor account. From these 2 points, do you have both GL accounts in the entry or you have GL and sub GL both?
GL.
GL and sub-GL both.
GL and WL.
GL and sub GL
GL
both.
both.
Now let me highlight vendor here. Let me highlight customer here. For vendor, there is no profit center. For customer, there is no profit center. Are these 2 points clear?
Yes.
Yes.
For vendor, there is no profit center. For customer also, there is no profit center. What we need to do here is, we need to make sure from the customer account and from the vendor account, we are understanding profit center is not coming. Okay. But one point which we need to understand, which we need to keep in our mind here is that at the time of a payment, you need to remember how are we processing the payment. When I say how are we processing the payment, why are you processing payment now? As per this scenario, why did we process the payment? Because we purchased something.
To reduce
Because
liability.
you saw the liability. Because you saw the liability, you issued the payment. Because you saw the receivable, you collected the payment. Am I correct? Now, is this payment against invoice or not against invoice?
Against invoice.
Against invoice.
Right? Both the payments are against invoice.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? When I'm making this payment, I know I made a purchase, I have an invoice. Against this invoice, I am releasing the payment. Okay. When I'm looking at the customer, I know I have the customer invoice. I sold something to the customer. Customer need to pay money to me, or I need to collect money from my customer. I have collected payment on this invoice. Let's assume that these 2 payments are against invoices. In short, payment with reference to invoice. Am I clear? Payment against invoice or payment with reference to invoice number. Sometimes you will process the payment without making any transaction in the case of advance payment. Yes or no? There is no bill when you pay the advance. Am I correct? That's a different case. That we will talk later on. But at this moment, we are exclusively talking about payment against invoice scenario. Whenever you are processing a payment against invoice, bank accounts will not have any profit center. Whenever you process payment against invoice, bank account does not have the profit center. By default, we know vendor has no profit center. By default, we understood customer has no profit center. Now, at the time of a payment, in which scenario? Against invoice, bank also does not have the profit center. Technically, there is no profit center either on the debit or on the credit. Am I correct?
Yes.
Because whenever you process payment against invoice, we are not supposed to put, or we will not put profit center for bank accounts. We will not put profit center for bank account when you are processing a payment against invoice. Now in this case, bank GL account does not have the profit center. When bank does not have the profit center, then bank will receive the profit center from the offsetting account. What is the offsetting account for bank in this case?
Vendor.
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 In this case, bank offsetting account is vendor. Now, why vendor is coming into the picture? Because vendor is processing the payment or vendor is receiving the payment. Right?
Yes.
Why are you picking the vendor?
Yes.
Because there is a liability to the vendor. You're talking about the vendor because there is a liability in vendor. Am I correct? When we're talking about there is a liability in vendor, why liability is coming into
Yes.
vendor? Because there is an invoice in vendor.
Yes.
Now in the invoice, there is an accounting entry. In the invoice accounting entry, is this vendor having the profit center or not?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, having.
In
No.
GL.
In the invoice, this vendor
Yes.
has got profit center, yes or no?
No.
No.
Purchase will have
Yes.
the profit center. No.
Yes, yes.
Through
In the
purchase.
accounting
Ledger
entry,
we will
vendor
have.
has got profit center or not? My question is simple.
Yes.
Answer is a
No.
single statement, yes or no.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
it is there.
No.
Yes. Yes.
No,
Yes.
no, 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 no.
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 Okay.
Uses
No.
Let us
No.
understand one point. No PC is equal to
No
no
entry.
AC doc. No
No
PC
accounting
means no
entry.
AC doc. Now here we are talking about a point called payment. You are at a payment means invoice is already posted. Yes or no?
Yes.
You are
Yes.
looking at the invoice while you are on
Yes.
the payment, meaning invoice is already posted. If invoice is already posted, if you know this is statement, is this practically possible? Vendor does not have profit center now.
No, it
If
is not
vendor has no
possible.
profit
Vendors have
center,
the profit.
this statement would have become red. Am I correct? Should I put red or green for this?
Red, sir.
red.
For this scenario,
Green,
when
sir.
you are at the payment transaction, for this invoice, profit center will be available or will not be available.
Sir, it is
Will be
available.
available.
The profit
Will
center
be
is available because
So
in
it
the
will
invoice the purchasing
So
account is
whatever
the
profit
offsetting account.
center,
So the profit center will pick from the purchasing accounts.
in the
yeah,
yes
whatever profit center is there in the
in the
purchase account,
offsetting
that will be
account.
picked in the vendor account.
Now here we are talking about this while processing invoice or while processing payment.
While
We
processing
are
payment.
processing
Invoice.
When the invoice
Processing
posted,
payment.
it will be
We
have
are talking
the
about this while processing payment or while processing invoice.
While
while
The
processing
point
payment.
is raised
Payment.
from the payment point of view, from the invoice point of view.
From the
Payment point of view.
payment point
From the
of view.
payment point of view, right? When you're coming from the payment point of view, it is crystal clear invoice is already posted. Am I correct?
Yes.
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 When invoice is already posted, invoice has got profit center on both debit and credit with the help of active document splitting.
Yes.
This topic is already over. When we say no profit center, no accounting entry, if invoice is posted, meaning this statement is satisfied, system received profit center
Yes.
on the vendor account with the help of active document splitting, yes or no?
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
this vendor is representing a profit center or not in the invoice.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it is
It is
represented.
having a profit center. Now, when I'm processing the payment, if I'm selecting this vendor liability has a profit center or not?
Yes, sir. Profit center will available.
Yes.
Right? When I'm making the
Yes.
payment, if I'm selecting the invoice, while processing the payment, if I'm selecting the invoice, that invoice contains the profit center against vendor line item based on the active document splitting. Is my statement correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
yes.
Now
Yes.
here, from this vendor, profit center will be updated to this bank account. Profit center from this vendor account is coming to this because I'm just marking same color. Blindly this is coming and sitting here along with profit center. Profit center from vendor account is transferred to which account? Bank account.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? This is called as your which document splitting?
Passive.
This is called as your
Passive.
passive document splitting. Same case here also. When you are processing a customer invoice, based on the active document splitting, customer account received the profit center from the offsetting sales account. Yes or no? Invoice posted means no profit center, no accounting entry statement justified or not? Correct? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
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 According to this, once invoice is posted, profit center is available at customer line item or not?
Available.
Yes.
Available.
Available.
Profit center is available in the customer line item with the help of which document splitting?
Active.
Active. Active.
Active document splitting. Now, when you're trying to process the payment, we are processing the payment against the invoice. Am I correct? Scenario which we're talking about is clearly representing payment for an invoice or payment against invoice, payment with reference to invoice. So when I'm processing the customer payment, I am clearly selecting this payment is against this invoice. Correct? Now the
Yes.
invoice document contains profit center. From invoice document, customer account is bringing a profit center here. From the customer account, profit center is transferred or updated to bank account. What is this profit? What is this splitting called as?
Passive.
Passive splitting.
Passive document splitting. Okay, remember only these 2 points at this moment. Zero balance we will talk later, because zero
Sir, how it
balance
is
is
transferred to
possible for
bank?
us to understand. This we will understand as we move forward. At this moment, you only need to understand what it is transferred and why it is transferring, what is happening. We will be understanding with different other parameters. There are other things which we need to understand that I will add later on. But at this moment, all I want you to remember, understand is at the time of invoice, this is the accounting entry. There is something called document splitting. At the time of invoice, you are using active document splitting. At the time of payment, there is again document splitting, passive document splitting in case if your payment is against invoice. If it is a down payment, if it is any other payment, this may not be applicable. Because depending on the scenario, we need to make sure we are clearly segregating this transaction. We are ensuring that, okay, in this situation, this is what is happening. Not blindly in every payment, it is passive document splitting. You are 100% wrong. That is why we are clearly understanding this payment is against invoice. If payment is not against invoice, this passive document splitting may be wrong. Okay. Only these 2 points try to remember,
I have a
try to
question, sir.
understand. Just hold on. Your questions will be auto rectified as we move forward. Okay, because these points are all incomplete. Whatever we're discussing now, nothing is complete, everything is incomplete. Everything that I'm talking now in all these sessions has got question marks. Be very clear with this. Whatever the point I'm representing, every point, every session has got so many question marks in it. It is understood for you only when you have doubts in your mind. You have no doubt, meaning you have not understood what we discussed. You have doubt, you have question, is representing you are on track. Right? I know all of you will have different questions. I know what kind of questions are striking in each of your mind. I know what points are required for you to get those questions auto rectified. So as we move forward, your questions will be automatically rectified with the further examples that I'm going to quote. Okay, but at this moment, what I want all of you to remember is only the points, whatever is there on the Excel sheet. If you're able to read, if you're able to understand, I am more than happy with it. To that extent, everybody is clear. If you read vendor, you understand what is vendor, I am okay. If you read customer, you understand what is customer, I am okay. If you know invoice, if you know the accounting entry, that is enough. If you know the invoice, if you know the accounting entry, that is enough. Here, if you understand, this is containing a logic called document splitting. This invoice is using active document splitting, and this payment is using a passive document splitting. Why all the background theory we will see later on. Apart from the background theory logic, is the point whatever listed on the Excel sheet clear to understand or not, clear to read or not? Do not go inside what is this, why it is and all. If you are able to read this, are you able to understand at high level or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Only that is the requirement. We are not going inside because we are not doing any configuration. We are not explaining any scenario. We are just trying to make sure we are connected to the point, so that when I talk about document splitting, when I post a document in the system, when you post a document in the system, I want you to think through all these points. I want you to put me questions whatever the way you want when we are on that particular topic. Put me questions left and right, I'll answer all your questions. Now, even if I answer, you will not be able to understand, because I am straight away showing you the key points of the topic, which you have to remember, which you must know. Wherever there is no exception, wherever there is no excuses, only those points we are understanding, meaning all these points are mandatory, without any tolerance, without any excuses. 0% chance that I will ignore this. If you wanted to be in SAP FICO, if you wanted to become a consultant, these points are mandatory 100%. Not even 99.99%, it has to be strictly 100%. 0.01% also, there is no chance you will ignore it. Only those points we are discussing now, because when you know these points clearly, as we move forward, everywhere you will come across the same topic. Each and everything you do in SAP FICO has got a connection to these points. So make sure these points, as you read on the Excel sheet, you are able to connect. That is the only objective. That's what I said. Whatever we're discussing now, you just need to understand 10% understanding is enough. 10% understanding is more than sufficient from this. If anybody is not able to understand even 10%, that's a different story. But if you're able to at least understand it 10%, it is enough. Because this is only giving you an idea that, okay, these things I am going to understand in depth, in detail as we move forward. Because technically, we have not even started our course actually. Am I correct? As I said, we will be counting, we will be starting our duration after 1 month. We are only on 15th session. There are more 15 sessions which we need to understand, which we need to complete before we start, before we log into SAP. Or before you log into SAP, it will complete another 15 sessions. In these 15 more days, you are going to have all the conceptual understanding. That is where you will practically relate. Even though I don't explain, you will be in a position to understand on your own. You'll connect all the dots. Now I'm only placing the dot. I'm not connecting any dot, I'm just putting the dot. You also put the dots only. When I draw the line, you will understand, okay, this is how I will have to connect the dot. Okay, do not go in detail into it. That will create unnecessary confusion, unwanted confusion, which is not at all required. On any topic, whatever you have done so far, everything is the same thing. All you need to do is just read the Excel sheet, ensure you're able to connect it to what we have discussed. That is more than sufficient. All I'm expecting from you is only 10% understanding from this, nothing beyond that. And if you have this 10%, I hope everybody is beyond this 10% understanding. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So you are on track. If you are able to understand the 10%, you are on track. If anybody is not able to understand the 10% of it, then please ask me a question. Then I'll clarify your doubt. Why you are not able to understand the 10% of it also. There's no way that you will not understand at least 10% of it. Easily everybody will understand, because I'm not talking anything which is too technical. I'm not talking anything which is tricky to understand. Majority of the things, whatever I'm writing, whatever I'm talking, is something that you are already aware of, either in any of the ways, maybe through academic, maybe through your experience, maybe through your understanding and knowledge. Correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Somewhere or the other, whatever we are writing, whatever we're discussing, you are somewhere familiar to it. Only those points I'm using. I'm not using any technical terms. I'm not using any technical coding language and all. I'm using basic fundamental terminology to ensure you feel connected, to ensure you feel confident, you feel comfortable. That's the main priority we need to ensure. In the first 1 month, we will ensure we are feeling comfortable, we are feeling connected, familiar with the system terminology. As we move forward, same things we will be using. Now slowly you start looking at any job description of SAP FICO. You will find this terminology called document splitting or not.
Yes.
We did not do any configuration. We did not know anything related to SAP, but yes, at least some point you are able to understand there are three document splitting. Active will be used in case of invoice, passive will be used in case of payment. This one liner is sufficient at this moment, because tomorrow as you slowly look at a different job description, different projects, content, whatever, whoever is already working, you will be slowly able to feel connected. Okay, this is something I think I am aware of the basic fundamental point. Then slowly when you're connecting the dots, you feel that yes, now I think I'm able to understand, I'm able to relate. At the end, you need to make sure you are taking your own example, you are bringing output from the system. Not that I am writing this, you are also writing this, not going to be this sufficient. You need to take this only as a reference, make your own example, bring your output as per your understanding. That is your actual understanding, not that this is what I am doing, you copy the same thing, is not your understanding, is not your learning. Right? You should not copy me when you're practicing. That is only for a reference. That is only to give you an idea. That is only to make you feel comfortable with the content. That's all. Later on, you need to make sure you will think through different scenarios. You will make your own scenario. You will bring output from the system. That is more important. That is where you will understand. Yes, I think now I'm able to understand SAP FICO. Until you are not able to understand, until you are not able to make your own example, it is clearly representing you are not confident. Tomorrow, when you're in the project, when you're in the interview, when you're talking to anybody, you cannot copy what I'm telling, right? Yes or no? Whatever I'm telling
Yes.
is only to make you understand. Now, whatever you're telling is not tell the other person to understand, right? You're telling to let other person realize that you know the subject. I am telling you at this level because I'm teaching you. You are not teaching to your interviewer, you are not teaching to your client. Am I correct? I am
Yes.
writing these things, I am explaining same point 2 to 3 times because I am teaching you. I want you to understand. I don't want you to prove that I know this. Right? The concept here is different. So that is the reason I may be talking in a different way. If I talk in a different way to prove my knowledge, to prove my experience, to prove my skill set, I am sure you will not even understand what I am talking. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Right? If I start talking in a different way, business terminology, different scenarios, I'm sure most of you will not even understand what I'm talking. But the objective here is not to prove what I know, it is to make sure you understand what I'm talking. But when you're in the interview, it is not that the other person understands what you're talking, right? Other person should realize that you know the subject, you're good at the concept and all, and then they should feel confident, they should feel comfortable to offer you the job. There, the way you talk should be different. For that to come, no other go, you need to make sure slowly you're understanding, slowly you're feeling comfortable, confident, with which as you move forward, you will gain the knowledge, you will gain the confidence. This is not going to happen overnight. It will take some time. Have a little more patience, another 15 days maximum. In this another 15 days, maximum of the topics you will have thorough, fair understanding. Then once we start our actual counting from 31 onwards, session 31 onwards, or after 30 session, not calendar date 30, session count after 30, you will see the drastical improvement in you. You will see whatever I'm talking, even though technically you will be able to connect it. You'll feel that yes, I think I know what it is. I know what you're talking about. Now you may not be having a clarity on what we're talking, why I'm talking, but after another 15 days, you will have clear understanding. Okay, this is the reason you're explaining me. I understood. What next? You'll be comfortable, you'll be confident because you are in a position to connect the dot. At this moment, you're only placing the dot, you're not connecting the dot. So just take this as a dot, put in your book also a dot, leave it. Because we need some more dots to connect it. So once we collect all the dots, then we will play with the dot. You draw whatever the diagram you want, wherever you are confusing, put your question. Then I'll put examples to connect your questions to make your question will convince all other people. So that when we are having a doubts or question and answer session, let it be in such a way that all others will get benefited. Because you may be getting a question, your question might be beneficial for all others, yes or no?
Yes.
Because your doubts your doubts or your question might allow me to give different example, or when I know that these are the kind of doubts that you are getting, I will try to give different kind of examples. Maybe a very simple example, maybe example which will connect different other dots, which will make everybody feel connected to what is your question, why you got the doubt, what I am answering, how I am explaining the answer, how I am convincing your question. You will understand, you will notice different points, you will slowly learn it. Okay, if these kind of questions are coming, this is how we need to answer. Because when you put a question, whatever I will tell, you will not be okay, right? Unless you are convinced, you will say, okay, understood. No, right? Because you have a doubt. My answer should clarify the doubt, not increase the doubt. Am I correct? Whatever the answer I am giving, it should clear your doubt. It should make you feel comfortable. Rather, it should not make you feel more confused, right? So my answer should decrease your doubts. My answer should increase your confidence. Otherwise, what will happen? My answer will increase your doubt, decrease your confidence. That way, it should not be. And then your doubt, my answer will have to make sure all of us will get benefited. Meaning different people will get to know different point. Even when you refer the recording, you'll be able to listen to these questions doubts, because every doubt, every question, whatever you ask will be part of the recording. I'll not answer any doubt out of the recording. All your doubts, all your questions will be answered in the live recording. So that tomorrow, even when you go through the recording, along with the topic what we discussed, different other doubts, questions will also help you out. Clear, right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, fine then. Let me stop this here.